There's a version of Florida retirement that never makes it into the glossy brochures. Not the overpriced Miami high-rises, not the endless golf cart sprawl of the big master-planned communities. This is the other Florida. The one where a house can cost less than a new pickup truck, where the neighbors learn your name inside a week, and where you're not wiring an insurance company thousands of dollars a year just to live near a beach you'll visit maybe twice a summer. These places are hiding in plain sight all over the state. A fishing village so small that golf carts outnumber cars, and people don't bother locking their doors. A spot where you can legally slip into the water beside a wild manatee before breakfast. A Victorian town wrapped around a lake so perfectly round that geologists still argue about how it got there. If any of that sounds better than a $2,000 monthly HOA and a view of your neighbor's lanai, stick around. Here are 10 Florida towns the retirement industry would rather you never discover. Number 10. Inverness. If you want the single best all-around value on this list, it's probably Inverness, and almost nobody outside Citrus County has heard of it. Picture brick sidewalks running under a canopy of live oaks, a handsome 1912 courthouse anchoring the center of town, and the whole thing feeling like someone designed a retirement community from scratch and then forgot to tell the rest of the country. The numbers back up the charm. Median home listings sit around $263,000, and the cost of living runs roughly 12% under the national average. Better still, HCA Florida Citrus Hospital is right downtown, which matters far more at 65 than any Instagram sunset. A Scottish settler named the place after deciding Lake Henderson resembled the Highlands, which is generous, but it set the tone. The 46-mile Withlacoochee State Trail cuts straight through town, and retirees treat it like a linear main street, biking, walking, stopping for coffee. There are also the Inverness Senior Games for the 50 and over crowd, and an entire month-long festival honoring the region's native cooter turtles, complete with a parade, amateur wrestling billed as Small Town Slam, and something called Cooterween. Around 40% of residents are 65 or older, and they're clearly having a better time than the rest of us. Number 9. Apalachicola. You come here expecting a sleepy fishing village, and leave wondering if you just found the best food town in America that nobody talks about. Fewer than 2,300 people live here. There are fewer than 5 traffic lights, and somehow, crammed into this tiny waterfront downtown, are 3 James Beard-nominated restaurants. This is the Forgotten Coast, the stretch of Gulf shoreline the tourism machine genuinely overlooked. And you roll in past shrimp boats and tin roof cottages on air that smells like diesel, brine, and fresh oysters. The bay once supplied close to 10% of the nation's oysters. The wild harvest was paused in 2020 to let the reefs recover, and cage-raised aquaculture has since kept the oyster culture alive in a new form. Cost of living lands about 4% below the national average, and homes that went for under $180,000 in 2019 now sit in the mid-300s, still remarkably cheap for waterfront Florida. History runs deep, too. Trinity Episcopal Church is one of the country's earliest prefabricated buildings, shipped in by schooner and bolted together on site. One honest caveat: hurricane exposure is real, and the nearest full-service hospital is a half-hour away. Local Weems Memorial has about 25 beds, fine for routine care, but not for emergencies needing specialists. Go in knowing that. Number 8. Defuniak Springs. Imagine a lake shaped like an almost perfect circle, roughly a mile around, spring-fed, 64 feet deep, with a 1.25 ADA-compliant sidewalk tracing the entire shoreline. Victorian houses trimmed in gingerbread line one side. Water fills the other. That's Defuniak Springs, and the first time you walk that loop on a cool morning, it's genuinely hard to believe nobody told you about it. This is the Panhandle, about 60 miles east of Pensacola,
and it doesn't look like the Florida in your head. There are rolling hills, real elevation near 260 feet, and summers cooler than anything south of Orlando. The history sounds invented, but isn't. In 1885, the town became the winter home of the Florida Chautauqua, an adult education movement that drew thousands by rail to lectures and concerts in a 4,000-seat hall. The Walton de Funiac Library, dating to 1886, is one of the oldest continuously operating libraries in the state. Legend even says a colonel won the right to name the town in a card game, which may or may not be true, but feels exactly right for the place. Come December, the whole lake lights up for the Christmas Reflections Festival, thousands of bulbs mirrored on that impossibly round water. Population is under 6,000, cost of living sits below the coastal side of the county, and the Emerald Coast beaches are only 45 minutes off whenever you miss the crowds. Number 7. Mount Dora. If festivals are your thing, Mount Dora will spoil you for everywhere else. The town throws more than 30 a year, and the flagship art festival each February draws something like 300,000 visitors to a place with a population of about 14,000. Do that math and you get pleasant chaos. It sits in Lake County, roughly 30 miles northwest of Orlando, in what locals call the Golden Triangle. The downtown is hilly, walkable, and looks out over Lake Dora, which links into the 75,000-acre Harris chain of lakes. There's a freshwater lighthouse, one of only 3 in the state, plus a main drag stacked with antique shops, galleries, and restaurants, and an antique market people happily drive hours to reach. It's been named Florida's friendliest small town, and judging by how many strangers say hello unprompted, the title holds up. Median sale prices run around $385,000 to $430,000, comfortably below most coastal Florida, and Advent Health Waterman is about 10 minutes away in Tavares. The crowd skews older, the social calendar is packed, and loneliness, the real silent killer of retirement, doesn't get much room to breathe here. Number 6. Safety Harbor. This one has the wildest origin story on the list. Back in 1539, Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto supposedly stood at a natural mineral spring on the shore of Tampa Bay, named it Espiritu Santo, and, as the legend goes, was hunting for the fountain of youth. Whether he truly believed it or just liked the water is lost to time, but the spring is still flowing, and the town is still drinking from it. Safety Harbor sits on the quiet northwest shore of Old Tampa Bay in Pinellas County, population around 17,000. The Safety Harbor Resort and Spa, built in 1924 over those same springs, is the only natural mineral spring spa in all of Florida. The downtown is walkable and low crime, with an unexpected metaphysical streak: herbal apothecaries, astrologers, a psychic or two on Main Street. Add the ancient Baranoff Oak and the Tocobaga Indian Mounds in Philippe Park, and you get real history instead of manufactured charm. This is the pricier end of the list. Median sales have run from the high 500s into the $670,000 range. But you're buying into the entire Tampa Bay metro healthcare system, a big edge over the more remote towns. One caution: nearly half of local properties carry some flood risk, so get an elevation certificate and a real insurance quote before you sign anything. Number 5. Cedar Key. The road to Cedar Key literally runs out of land. State Road 24 simply ends and drops you onto a cluster of tiny islands 3 miles offshore. And that's the town. About 700 people live here full-time. Golf carts outnumber cars, there are no high-rises, no traffic lights, and by most accounts, a lot of folks don't bother locking their front doors. Driving in feels like passing through a time portal. It's a genuine end-of-the-road fishing village that doubles as a long-running artist colony, with co-op galleries and a seafood festival that's been running since the mid-1960s. Naturalist John Muir wrapped up his famous 1,000-mile walk right here in 1867, and honestly, after 1,000 miles, this is a fine place to stop. Here's the wild card.
Cedar Key grows somewhere between 90 and 95% of Florida's farm-raised clams, a roughly $45 million a year industry that replaced net fishing after the 1994 ban. The town rebuilt its whole economy around aquaculture and even banned septic tanks outright to protect the water. The 1854 Seahorse Key Lighthouse is the oldest on Florida's west coast. The birding is world-class, and the stone crab will rearrange your feelings about seafood. Just respect the risk. Hurricane Idalia hit hard in 2023, and the island is still rebuilding. And know that serious medical care means a drive to Gainesville. Number 4. Lake Placid. This is the town that sounds fake until you actually stand in it. Reader's Digest named it America's most interesting town back in 2013, and if anything, they undersold it. The downtown is an open-air gallery. 47 larger-than-life murals painted across the buildings, plus artist-decorated trash cans for good measure.
It sits in Highlands County, ringed by 27 freshwater lakes, and it calls itself the caladium capital of the world because it grows something like 98% of the planet's caladium bulbs on roughly 1,200 acres. Then, right when you think you've heard it all, someone mentions Toby's Clown School and the American Clown Museum, both real, both here, giving Lake Placid more clowns per capita than anywhere in the country. The name comes from Melville Dewey of Dewey Decimal fame, who loved Lake Placid, New York enough to borrow it. That mix of charming, slightly eccentric, and completely sincere is the whole personality of the place. For retirees, it's one of the most affordable options in the state. One-bedroom rentals have been reported as low as $700 a month, and the town is flat and walkable enough for anyone worried about mobility. There's even a farm winery, a rare scrub habitat state park on Lake June in winter, and a July Caladium Festival that turns the streets into an explosion of pink, red, and green. Number 3. Crystal River. Here's a line that sounds like a tourism ad, but happens to be true. In Crystal River, you can wake at dawn, drop a kayak into Kings Bay, paddle through mist rising off 72-degree spring water, and have a wild manatee surface a few feet from your face. Legally. This is one of the only places on Earth where swimming with wild manatees is permitted, and it's surreal enough to make you forget how cold a January morning on the water actually is. The town sits on the Nature Coast in Citrus County, about 90 minutes north of Tampa. Kings Bay is fed by more than 70 natural springs, and each winter, hundreds of West Indian manatees migrate into that warm water. The Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge was created in 1983 specifically to protect them, the only federal refuge in the country established for a single species. The retirement math is just as friendly. New construction is available around $289,000. Cost of living runs roughly 6% below the national average and about 15% below the Florida average. And some retirees report finding rentals under $700 a month. Nearby Citrus Hills offers golf for the country club set, while scalloping, kayaking, and tarpon fishing keep everyone else busy year-round. Healthcare is covered by Nature Coast facilities, and neighboring Homosassa Springs even landed on a national top 10 retirement list for 2026. Number 2. Tarpon Springs. Walk onto the sponge docks here for the first time, and you'll swear you left Florida for a Greek island.
A diver in full copper gear climbs out of a boat with an armload of natural sponges, while a bakery across the street pumps the smell of fresh baklava into the humid air. Tarpon Springs has the highest percentage of Greek Americans of any city in the United States. More than 1 in 10 residents claim Greek descent, and the culture here isn't decorative, it's structural. The town was built on sponge diving in the early 1900s when Greek divers brought their copper helmet technique to the Gulf and turned the place into a sponge powerhouse that at one point out-earned citrus as a Florida export. Diving still happens, the docks are still a working waterfront, and the high school teams are still called the Spongers. Every January 6th, the St. Nicholas Epiphany Cross dive draws enormous crowds. A priest throws a cross into the bayou, young divers leap after it, and the celebration, the largest of its kind in America, can triple the town's population for the day.
The local distillery makes the only ouzo produced in the U.S., and there's a bakery whose bread will quietly ruin every other loaf for you. Best of all for retirees, it's more affordable than Pinellas neighbors like Clearwater and St. Pete. Advent Health North Pinellas is right in town, and the population of about 25,000 is big enough for real amenities, but small enough that your barista knows your name. Number 1. Punta Gorda. The top spot goes to the best proof on this list that a Florida retirement town can get knocked flat and still come back thriving. Hurricane Charlie scored a direct hit and wrecked the downtown in 2004. They rebuilt. Hurricane Ian did it again in 2022. They rebuilt again. Today, the restored 1920s downtown sits at the mouth of the Peace River on Charlotte Harbor, with a 2.3-mile harbor walk, the Fisherman's Village marina and shops, and sailboat canals that reach the Gulf without a single fixed bridge in the way. About half of everyone living in Punta Gorda is 65 or older. Half. This isn't a retirement community tucked inside a town. It's a town that has fully, unapologetically organized itself around retirement. Cost of living runs 6 to 9% below the national average. Median home prices land around $348,000 to $400,000. And the regional hospital has collected enough awards that quality care doesn't mean an hour on the road. Walk the harbor walk at sunset as sailboats slip out toward Charlotte Harbor, and someone in a Hawaiian shirt will probably hand you unsolicited and correct advice about the best local grouper sandwich. Talk to enough residents over 60, and you'll hear the same story again and again. They priced out Naples, Sarasota, and Fort Myers, did the math, and chose here instead. Not as a consolation prize, but as the smarter play. For anyone who wants waterfront living, a real downtown, strong healthcare, and a community that has literally outlasted the worst Florida can throw at it, Punta Gorda earns number 1. None of these 10 towns are famous. You won't find them on the billboards or in the Super Bowl ads, but every one of them still offers what the big Florida retirement cities gave up a long time ago: character, affordability, a genuine sense of place, and a front porch where someone might actually sit down and talk with you.